how much does the overall economy impact your personal business? Topic number 2 is what indicators should you be on the lookout for? And then topic 3, what can you do to mitigate a dry spell in your own business? So shooting from the hip, I'm guessing that topic number 3 is where people are really going to want to spend some time today. So I'll go ahead and just get started with some comments around the overall economy, since that's kind of my milieu right now. So first off, who's concerned, who's not concerned? Poll of the room here. How are you guys feeling about the overall economy? Thumbs up if you're optimistic, thumbs down if you're a little bit worried.
Thumbs down.
Okay, Miriam's got a thumbs down. Jeff's got a thumbs up. I like it. Optimist over here. Here we go. Okay, anybody else? Thoughts? Linda's optimistic. Excellent. Okay, we got a sort of medium, one of these going out there. Okay, so the long story short here, folks, is we feel these ups and downs in the economy very acutely, but they happen all the time, and they're going to continue to happen, right? The economy will be down one year. We might have a couple of good years. It's going to go back down. It's going to go up. These cycles are normal, and they're always going to happen. There are many schools of thought that might say it's going to be those cycles will shorten up, so we might see booms and busts more frequently. But the reality is they're going to be there. There's never going to be one time when the market's always good, or the economy is always good. So as small business owners, we've got to just know that walking into this operation, and know that we have to plan for both when times are good and times are bad. And so here's some interesting trends that may have not kind of come out of the news outlets that you guys listen to, that kind of help paint the picture of where we're at today. So whether or not we're in a recession, nobody really knows, but a lot of the companies, like the one I work for, Edward Jones, we kind of feel that if we're not in one already, we're likely to see a mild recession materialize this year. And so some of the things that are interesting, the savings rate, so the personal savings rate, that which we all save ourselves, was 7.4% a year ago in December, and now it's down to 3.4% this year. So people, what does that tell us? People are saving a lot less, right? During the COVID times, there was, kind of restrictions on what we could do. So people socked a lot of money away. Now we're seeing a reverse trend. They're starting to spend again, and they're not saving at the same rate that they used to. And then more people, since they've started really measuring it, have taken a hardship distribution out of their retirement plans this year than ever before. So that's another indicator that the high inflation and, this possibility of recession is actually affecting people and the way that they might spend money or save money. So those are two interesting ones. We've all heard the inflation story, I think. Is everybody pretty up to speed on what's happening there? Okay, tuck this away. Inflation is going to be an important part of what we talk about later. But the long story short there is we're in an inflationary environment where, every month goods and services cost something like 5 or 6% more than they did the previous month. So not too hard to understand that puts a squeeze on what people are able to spend. It costs more to do everything. It's not just milk at the store. It's somebody who wants to use your service, potentially might have to pay for it. Raw materials, gas is going to cost more. You can probably expect the rent for the person who just opened up that store. You may see rent increases. You might see remodel costs if you wanted to, outfit your store. All that stuff is going to cost more. And so knowing that, we just have to build those things into our assumptions and our business plans, where, before we might have said, here's what's possible, but now we have to do that to reflect an inflationary environment that's going to persist throughout this year. So I'll pause there. Does anybody have any questions on inflation? It's a pretty big topic right now. Okay. If you do have questions, let me know. Okay, so labor market. This is one of the bright spots in the economy. One of the things that we're seeing, people who watch economics, is that the labor market's very tight. People are still being hired at record rates. People are still employed. You hear about a lot of layoffs in tech. That's a symptom of something else, but basically we're definitely in a very tight labor market. Some of you may even have a hard time recruiting talent, or getting people to work, and that's probably likely to persist for a while also. And so that's a tension point between what's happening, in a business and what's happening in the economy as a whole. And a word that we use to describe some of that is decoupling, right? Like we might see a recession happening here, but that's not connected to what's happening in your business, which maybe you can't find anybody to hire, you can't find people to work. So, a lot of this is just shaking out from 2 years of COVID, difficulties in various, hospitality sectors and things, those jobs just weren't available. So a lot of those people are going back to work doing other things. There's a lot of analysis to put together there, but I think what you guys need to know from a trend standpoint is this is going to affect your business because it's going to be hard to find people for a while. If you haven't experienced that, congratulations. But if you have, you're not alone. And I think you'll see it in various areas, and your supplier base or your, customer base may also be experiencing this. So it's a pretty important trend. And the final important trend is going to be, unfortunately not a good trend for a while. And that's the cost of capital, which is a fancy way of saying how much a loan costs right now. It's a lot. It costs a lot of money to borrow money right now. And when we see these tech companies like Amazon and Salesforce, when they lay people off, part of that is because those companies, they need to borrow money from banks to grow. And when the cost of borrowing is 2 or 3 times what it was 4 years ago, they can't do that at the same rate anymore. And so a lot of those people that they brought in to do projects that don't create money for the company, they have to let them go, clean up their books, and sort of make the company look a little bit more attractive to investors. That's why we see a lot of layoffs there. But for you guys, that just means it's going to be harder to get money, right? If you're dependent on loans, that interest rate's not very attractive right now. Has anybody gone out for a loan recently or anything like that? Anybody have any direct experience they can share? Well, if you do end up going, to a financial institution, say a bank or something like this, it's going to be a lot more expensive than it was 2 years ago. And that's also not something that's going to change for a while. So the money that you borrow now is going to be expensive money, unfortunately. So those are probably the biggest trends, I would say, that are going to impact your business. And with 100% certainty, the overall economy is going to have an impact on your business, right? Like, let's take landscaping for a little bit. That's kind of what I would consider a discretionary service, right? And a lot of people, when times get tough, they may choose not to engage your services because that's something they could do themselves if they have to, right? It's an area they can trim or something like this. Conversely, if they have a landscaper now that's charging them a lot, that's an opportunity for you. If you can deliver that same service with a little bit more value for a cheaper price, then that's an opportunity area for you to say, hey, don't cut the service out altogether. My firm, my company can help you with that and do it cheaper. That's just one example that I can think of. But those are, in my book anyways, the biggest trends to keep an eye on. And there's definitely going to be impact to everybody's business through this potential recession. So questions on that before I roll over to the next topic? You guys are a quiet bunch.
I have a question, Adrian, about inflation. Are there things we can be on the lookout for in our businesses to see like when inflation might start to come down, or when we might see a change with that? I know there's been a lot in the news about the Feds raising rates, but are there any other markers that give us an indication of if there will be a change with that?
Sure. There's 2 things you can keep an eye on. And the main one, the main index that everybody quotes is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. That's the easiest way to understand what's happening from a macro level. And that those numbers get posted every month, and they just came out this morning, and they were slightly higher than anybody wanted. So when you see that, you're going to see effects of that in the stock market. But the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is very simple to keep track of, and the Fed wants that thing to be somewhere south of like 3%, right? So when you hear things like, oh, what's inflation at? Inflation is a nebulous concept, but the Consumer Price Index, they want to see that go down as opposed to remain the same or going up. So that's the easiest way for you guys to keep track of it. They only release it once a month, so it's not very burdensome to do. but that's the one that's going to drive money policy in America. And then the other one you can look at is essentially, you can look at interest rates from the bank, interest rates from CDs, and interest rates from high yield, savings accounts, because those, as interest rates go up, the Fed raises their rates, and then the interest rate you can get on some of those investments will also go up. So case in point, a year ago, as code was recovering, you could buy a 1-year CD that would give you about 0.25% return. That's the best you could do. Interest rates were low, CD returns were low. Now fast forward to this year, interest rates are high, CD rates are high. You can get a 1-year CD that pays about 4.7%. So they kind of move together. So there's two ways you can kind of follow that. And CPI, somebody's in chat asking where to find the CPI. If you just Google what is the CPI today, then I'll direct you to the .gov webpage where they publish that. Super easy to find. It's going to be well reported on. And if it's of interest to you to learn more about it, a great resource is Investopedia. They are brilliant at explaining all of these difficult economic concepts and how they matter to people. So I can't recommend them highly enough. I use them a lot in my own business. So anyway, that should, Hannah, is that kind of, what you were looking at was like an actual thing people can check out and measure?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think it's easy, for all of us to get caught up in the articles we're seeing in the news and get either freaked out or, it just leads us to down different paths. So to have, hard facts and numbers that we can kind of just look at, I think is helpful to gauge.
Absolutely. In simplest terms, everybody, it's too high right now. The Fed wants inflation to be below 3%. And so until it's below 3%, it's going to cost a lot to borrow money. It's super simple. You really don't need to read all the fear-inducing commentary that's out there, because that's meant to entertain you. It's meant to provoke a visceral reaction. And the reality is, until that number gets to a certain point, interest rates are going to be high. It's not a rocket science thing, but it's also not something that any of us can control. We have zero control over that. We have no real direct way to influence it. And the speed at which it's going to change is not going to meet any of our timelines. So, it's almost like it's just a known quantity that's there. It's going to impact us. That's just kind of why we're having this conversation today. But that isn't something that you can change. And so I wouldn't put a lot of your mental resources behind understanding how CPI is going to affect you. Know what it is, know why it's important, but boy, unless you're the Federal Reserve, you don't have much of a stake in that. But anyway, so that's a thing.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. Question. I think it's on the cost of capital. So just basically, like you say, is like, for example, like we do landscaping. So we literally, like, you're meaning like we can't increase our prices, just like maybe just being competitive on the market to keep us busy?
Well, yeah, I was going to talk about prices in a little bit, but I'll talk about it now.
Even though, like, as you mentioned, like all the material, the equipment, diesel, super expensive, the diesel, like everything, it's from the skies. So that's like I understood, like we need, like, just to keep us busy, like maybe be competitive with the prices, even though like now we had to increase the price like 50-70% of like 2 years ago. Yeah. So it's kind of hard, but like that's why that we are here, like to help me to
so you're
getting fine with that.
Yeah, you're getting at a very difficult and challenging problem that all business owners have, and that's how do we manage pricing. And so this is like a 5-hour topic, but I'll try to but distill some things down. So the first thing, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So just like a quick sample.
Yeah.
For a bathroom, like I've just sent this estimate. So for a bathroom remodel, it was my price. I think my prices I try to be like fair, like on the
Sure.
like just fair prices. Okay, so my quote was like $12,000, and then it came another contractor. He's supposed to do the same job with everything, like the same thing that I offer, but for $5,000. I can't beat that price. Like, okay, go ahead, go with your contractor for the $5,000.
Yeah.
And if I make numbers, I can get like a maybe you can do it, but like you earn like a $200 a day, and then you have to pay your people.
Yeah.
So it's like a huge difference.
Yep. Yeah. The difference between 500 or sorry, 5,000 and 12,000 is very extreme, which
They're very extreme. It's like,
yeah, so having me being somebody who has used contractors before, what I appreciate the most as a customer is to understand where that money is going and how it's coming to the business, and hold on to that thought, because pricing is related to value, and value is perceived by the customer. Okay, that's how the guy who's paying you sees what your value is. And so when we're talking about pricing and cost of capital, all that, pricing is pretty important, because the economic realities that we just talked about are telling all of us that the same stuff we bought last month or last year is now 8% more expensive, or 6%, whatever it is. So we know that at a minimum, in order for us to maintain the same level of margins and profit that we did last year, we have to be charging between 6 and 8% more this year. That's a reality. It's an economic reality. Like this can of Coke, right? There's aluminum in the can. So let's say that costs 5 cents. Now it's cost 10 cents. Coke has to make up that 5 cent difference in order for them to continue to make money in their business plan. So the first line of defense for all of you guys is to understand that inflation, as it's impacting you, like on some level, it is appropriate to pass those costs on to the consumer, because you're not able to absorb all of them. It's not possible, right? You can't do it. So that's a thing to know, and it's a point of education between you and your customer, right? So when somebody says, why should I pay you $12,000 for this job? Well, that's an opportunity for you to add value and education to that customer and say, listen, we're all in an inflationary environment. We know that everything costs more. So out of the gate, my raw material costs are 20% more. I'm not going to pass all that on to you, but I'm going to pass 15% of that on to you, right? So this much goes to materials. I have to pay my contractors this much. I pay good ones because I don't want, jobs to go south, and I don't want to have an issue. I want everybody, you know what I mean? And you say, these are the reasons why. And, I can tell you from my own business and from other businesses I've had a direct experience with, if you're talking about price, you're generally talking about the wrong things with customers, right? Because if you're always fighting with people on price, there's always going to be someone who will be cheaper. There will be that $5,000 person. They will win that job. It's not going to go well. And you know what I mean? And that's not good. So without spending the entire rest of my life talking about price, I think, Miriam, give me a call after this or something, and I'll kind of, share with you some of the ways we do it. But I think just this little point to everybody, as we're looking at ways that we can protect ourselves from this, you've got to know what your business's value is, because customers will pay you for the value. They're going to, the way that they pay you is with dollars, right? Unfortunately, that is the economic reality. We don't barter for things anymore. Like, I can't give you 40 jars of honey for a kitchen remodel. That's not the way it works. I have to translate that into dollars, give you dollars for stuff. And so you have to find ways to explain and educate your customer base on where the true value is, right? Why should somebody pay you $12,000 versus somebody else $5,000? It's probably not that hard to explain that. But if you haven't socialized that, if you haven't developed a way to talk about that with your customers, this would be a great year to start figuring that out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we will come back to that because I did want to talk a little bit about pricing, and I'm like rotating every 2 minutes because the sun is there's no way to stop it, you guys. So I'm trying not to have a bar of sunlight across my face. Okay, so Hannah, you had said so that was kind of the overall impact. The overall economy impact your business? Absolutely. And in those basic ways, like everything costs more. So you have to adjust your prices to account for that, right? There's no other way to do that unless you're content with seeing your margins erode. But indicators, right? There are a few other indicators, and I broke this off into things, like I said before, things you can control and things you can't control. So the macroeconomic things, we can look at them and understand them. We can't control them, and that's the supplier pricing. You know what what your suppliers, the gas station, what those guys are going to charge, right? Labor trends. Those are things we don't have any influence over directly, but there are things within our business that are trends that we do have control over, or that we can influence with decisions, right? And those things are such as cash flow, conversion rates, revenue, and the activities that each of you do to build your business. So what do I mean about that, right? And I'm also want to come back to seasonality for Alexis and Jeff, and really you as well, Miriam. Seasonality is the fancy word for saying throughout the course of a year, I'll have busy periods and I'll have slow periods, and they're predictable, right? For the retail person out there, after the holidays, you know it's going to be a quiet time. Usually October is kind of quiet in retail, right? So you can build that seasonality chart, you know, of your business with revenue and say, okay, I know I'm going to have a downtime here, and I know I'm going to have a boom time here, and so forth. And that's a planning topic, which we'll get to in a second. But let's talk about cash flow. So if you monitor cash flow closely, which I highly encourage all of you to as a business, that's the indicator of health, right? That's your business's pulse and blood pressure and all that. How much money is coming into my business? How much money is going out? So first line of defense is if you do your own books, or if you have a bookkeeper, it's time to have a cash flow meeting and see if there are cash flow trends you can identify, right? If your cash flow is trending negative, you have to immediately address that, right? So has everybody got some way to look at their cash flow? Or if they don't, do they know that Hannah and her organization can help you with that?
Yeah, and I think we've even done some trainings on cash flow, what it is, how to manage it. So I'll put some of those links in the chat, and that's definitely something some of our consultants can help you with if you're kind of in those early stages of just getting started with keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, that's a measurable trend that once you identify a good trend or a bad trend, you can do something about it. And a simple example would be if you're in retail, and normally November is your best month of the year, and you look at cash flow and your cash flow negative in November and December, you have a serious problem, right? That you need to address right away. Because if you can't be cash flow positive in the two best years or two best months of the year, you know, you have to make some changes somewhere, right? And similarly, if you're in, say, a clothing retail business where normally, you know, you have that sort of 2 times a year where people buy for the spring and summer, and then they buy for the winter and fall. And if you're well above where you normally would be, something cool just happened, right? Your cash flow spiked, and you want to identify what happened and why it happened. So it's something that generally you measure on the month, and getting a good handle on that and what it can tell you about your business, very important. So I can't stress that one enough. Conversion rate, this means different things for different people, but it might mean, you know, if you have somebody who answers phone for you, booking jobs, and they take 20 phone calls a day and 2 jobs result out of that, your conversion rate is 1 in 10, right? It's that simple. If you have an online retail business and 20,000 people click on your ad or click on your store, and 1 person buys something, you know, your conversion rate's 1 in 20,000, and so forth. That's an important metric to know, because if your conversion rate is going up, you're doing something right. And if your conversion rate is going down, you may have a marketing issue, or you may have another issue that needs to be addressed. So I'll pause there for a second. Everybody up to speed on conversion rate?
Yeah, is there any way I could get taken off of safe driving mode?
Boy, I don't know.
Or is
Well,
that something on my end? I might have to leave.
I
Come
think
back.
that's probably on your end. I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah.
So if you need to hop off and come back on, I'll let you right in.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm gonna leave and see if that solves it.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so yeah, so conversion rates measured differently in different businesses. For the I think it's Alexis who's opening up the store. There's a couple ways to look at conversion rate, right? If somebody walks into the store and walks out of the store, that's no sale. If somebody walks in the store and buys something, that's conversion, right? And so if you're dependent on, say, foot traffic or something like that, well, you need to potentially increase the amount of foot traffic that comes in through ads or something like this. And then you can have some way to measure, if 100 people walk in the door, I'm going to make 20 sales and I'm going to make X in revenue. And that's how you start to understand how viable your business is. And most importantly here, if I would expect to see some of those conversion rates go down, as people can't pay. And so that's a trend that each of you can and should measure on a monthly basis when you're having those monthly planning meetings and say, okay, where are we at with conversion rate, right? If it's going down, there's a different problem than if you're having less people come in the door. So conversion rate, again, always links back to value, but that's a whole nother topic that I could spend hours on. So anybody have any questions on conversion rate or how that might apply to them? Okay, I will say one more thing about it, and that is this is an area where if you're in the business planning phase, or you're thinking about starting a business, or you're brand new to business, understanding your conversion rate is super important, because that's how you understand how long it takes you to make money. So let's go back to the retail example, right? If I have 100 people walk into my store, each person spends $10, that's a great day. But if my conversion rate is only 100 people come in and one person spends $10, that's $10 a day when I open my door. That's what I've got. So I've got to find a way to make 10,000 people walk in the door at that conversion rate. Otherwise, I'm never going to make enough money to cover rent and all those other things, right? So you just have to have an understanding of how much effort you have to put in to those potential customers before they're going to become a customer. And that is super important, because it really kind of defines your level, your pathway to profitability, right? I could talk a lot more about that, but I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah, no, and just real quick. So, I mean, before the conversion rate, of course, comes the marketing, right? Because without, what was that?
They're hand in hand. They're just like this, right?
Right. Yeah. So what are like other options in marketing? Of course, there's social media, and I don't know, one that's really big for me, surprisingly enough, is Craigslist. To be honest with you, I use Craigslist quite a bit. Most of my jobs come from there, and another one besides that is word of mouth. Yep. But Craigslist, I would say, has probably generated the most clients for me.
Perfect.
But other than that, I just don't know really in other outlets to kind of put my business out there.
Well, there are so many, and so do you have to pay for Craigslist ads?
I do. I pay $5 for every time I post. So I'll go ahead and generate that post probably like 2 times, 3 times a week.
That's very low cost. So if that is working, I would never stop doing that, because that's a low cost. But where you want to start getting sophisticated about it is start measuring it, right? When you get a job, hey, where'd you hear about us? Oh, I heard about you on Craigslist. Great. So if you know that everybody's hearing about you on Craigslist, run more Craigslist ads, right? And
right.
if somebody says, well, I heard about you on Craigslist, you can ask them directly when you're on the job site. Great. Hey, so you found us on Craigslist, but how else would you have searched for us? Like, do you ever use Facebook Marketplace? Do you ever use any of these other things? Your customers will tell you what they're doing. And because as soon as you leave that area of low cost marketing like Craigslist, everything starts to cost. And that's where you start to have to measure conversion rate. Because if you run an ad somewhere like a newspaper or whatever, the newspaper people will tell you 10,000 people will see this ad. It's going to cost you $100, right? Great, 10,000 people. If nobody calls you ever from that ad, that's not your customer base, right? But if 10 people call you from that ad, that's $100, got you 10 jobs. Like, that's a good conversion rate, right? So you start to figure that out. And it's going to be different from each one, but usually if someone's going to sell you ad space or sell you a marketing tool, they're going to be able to provide you with conversion information, and you can evaluate whether or not that makes sense. But it almost always costs you money to acquire a new customer. So to get a new customer, usually you have to pay, and getting a new customer is the most expensive thing to do. So keeping existing customers is way cheaper, right? So for you, Miriam and Jeff, like, if you guys have, people that are happy with your service, call them up every month. Say, hey, do you guys have anything else that you need us to do, right? Or is there something else we can do for you or a friend or somebody Because those people, those loyal people, you've already paid the cost to get them into the fold, and they're way easier to keep happy than it is to get a whole new person in there to pay for your service. So those are a couple interesting ways to look at that. Great question, though. Questions on any of that?
Yeah, and I know I mentioned the Craigslist, and you mentioned newspaper ads, which is a really good one. But besides those, what else would you recommend?
Say that again. Recommend
for marketing.
For marketing.
Oh, Jeff, I use Nextdoor. So Nextdoor works a lot for me. It's like from we get the most of the jobs.
Yeah, I use Nextdoor as well, but it's also a free service, Nextdoor. I don't know if you pay for your. Oh, you use it for free? Because I know there's an option to like pay for your ad too. No,
I'm always on Nextdoor, just looking for like somebody needs something, and then I just pop up my information, and they call me from there.
Yeah, Miriam is saying she's an active user, so she's monitoring what people are asking
like all
for
the time.
Yeah. So
right, and for me, that works for me too, because I use Nextdoor, but not nearly as close as Craigslist, which is a paid ad, and like you mentioned, you got to kind of constantly be on top of it. And then with you, I'm sure there's like 5-10 other people too who are engaging in those services. Like if someone posts, oh, I need a landscaper. For me, usually there's like 10 other people like offering to go and give estimates,
Yep. And I'll tell you this, both of you guys, some people don't show up to those estimates. Some people are late. You never know what that customer wants on the other end. So it's almost always worth it to try to find out, right? And for you, Jeff, one thing that happens in my neighborhood all the time is folks bring a little card or a flyer that says, here's what we specialize in. Give us a call. And there's 2 or 3 of them on my refrigerator right now. So my suggestion would be, if you have a neighborhood that has done well for you in the past, or you drive around and say, I want to work in that neighborhood because those people, they can pay for my service, they have a need for my service, just start walking around, getting to know them, or have some of your guys do that, right? Those are great ways to get closer to a community that can pay for your service. Yeah. So those are just a couple thoughts. If anything else pops into my head, I'll bring it up. I'm seeing another question here from Kalia. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Wanting to find customers for a new startup. Okay, so another critical thing for everybody, and this relates to you, Jeff, you, Miriam, and everybody else, is to understand who your target market is. I'm sure you guys have heard people tell you this before, but it is critical, right? If you do not understand your target market, you've got to gain an understanding. And it's deeper than just who they are, right? You need to create this idea in your head of who your ideal customer is. So if you have healthy meals, for example, let's put together a profile of a healthy meal eater, right? They're probably physically active. If they're going to use a service, they might not have time to cook it themselves, right? athletes. Okay, we've got athletes, people who might have a health problem already. So where do we find these people, right? Where do we find athletes? What do athletes search for on the internet? Where do they shop? You know, where, if people have a health issue like diabetes or something, well, they've got a doctor, right? So who are the doctors that are helping those people out? Can we speak to the doctors and talk about our service? So each of these scenarios is going to be different. But, you know, Jeff, if there's somebody with a huge yard, you know, and it's covered in weeds right now, boom, that's a target customer right there, you know? And so things like that, the more you know about your customer, the more you're going to be able to target them. And everybody's marketing channels will be different. But in this day and age, I encourage everybody to begin with something simple like a digital presence, whether that's Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. But if somebody wants to use my services as a financial advisor, they're going to go to Google right away or LinkedIn and look me up and see what my credentials are, see who I am, see if they like me, you know, take a look at my beard over time and decide if that's a viable person that they want to have helping them, right? And so on some level, the more you can share, the more you can use the digital tools to find your target customer and target to them, like the better off you're going to be. That is yet a whole nother webinar. Perhaps, Hannah, we should key one of those up. And I don't want to spend the whole rest of the time here talking about it, but you know, there's lots of resources at the SBDC evolving on target market, but you definitely want to get there as quick as you can, because you don't want to waste time or money going after clients that are never going to be your clients, right? Like, it's awesome that you've identified athletes and diabetics, right? That's perfect. That's two specific areas that you can target easily. And so each one of you will have these for your business. And I encourage you to find them, get inside their head, figure out where they go, what they do, how they live their lives, so that you can, you know, add the value that you know that you can. Okay. And then, sorry, Hannah, you want to say something?
I just want to mention there were a few other questions about marketing as well.
Yeah.
We have an entire YouTube playlist of all of our marketing trainings. We have done one on identifying your target audience that I linked in the chat here. And in the follow-up email, I'll include the link to that whole playlist so you can browse by topic. And we also have marketing specialists that you can meet with through the SBDC. So really helpful just to kind of get an action plan for wherever you're needing to focus your marketing efforts.
And they're going to be way better at it than me. So go talk to them. But so the last, there's a couple of indicators that I wrote down here. One of them is, to the extent that you're able, figure out what your competitors are experiencing, right? Like, if you're in the landscaping business and for whatever reason you are crushing it and you're talking to other competitors, or you hear through the grapevine that other competitors are not, you've got something special, right? And vice versa. If everybody in your industry is killing it and you are not, something is maybe not lined up. So it's always good to know what's happening with your competitors. In retail, super critical. Talk to as many other retailers as you can, you know, that maybe that are not in a competing industry, right? So if you're selling, you know, healthy meals, maybe go to a fitness store that's selling fitness equipment and ask what's happening. You know, say, hey, I'm starting a small business. I'm a little concerned about the market right now. What are you guys seeing? Right? Figure out what's happening with your competition or with other industries, and see what opportunities you can glean from that. And the last one is the trend is hopefully this is kind of an advanced level concept for everybody, but I encourage you all to measure your own activity, right? So if your own activity isn't producing the same results that it used to, time for a change, right? Like I'll know, for example, in my business, I'm going to make up numbers. I need to have 100 conversations before somebody, you know, agrees to a working relationship, right? So if in a month I had 100 conversations and I didn't get a client, I should probably think about what happened there. Or if I have 1,000 conversations and I didn't get a client, something is really, really wrong with my business, right? And so we all have those activities that we do, you know, maybe it's posting Facebook ads or whatever it is, but try to figure out what level of activity you have to do to get revenue coming in the door, right? That's pretty important. And so a lot of times we get tunnel vision and we focus on everything that's happening around us, but we lose sight on the things that we need to do, we know we need to do to build the business, right? Like, boy, I love to get like in the weeds about something, but at the end of the day, like, I also have to make sure I'm devoting enough time to growing my business and have it be sustainable. So questions on that? Okay, and that is my segue into the final area of discussion, which is what can you do to mitigate a dry spell in your business? So the very first thing is monitor that trend of your activity, but make sure your activities are focused on the things that bring you revenue. Okay, critical. So remember that if you're running this business, you are the person. Like, yes, you're responsible for lots of stuff, but your main job is to make the business succeed. So make sure you're spending time on the things that matter to the business, not the things that don't matter. Like mailing, Christmas cards makes everybody feel good, but does not keep money in the door, right? So like we talked about at the very beginning, revisit your pricing, okay? You should be charging more, all of you, than you think you should be. It's almost a guarantee, right? So instead of worrying about the price and how your customer views the price, find the way to educate them about the value that you're bringing, right? Like, Kalia, this is going to be a big thing for you, right? I imagine your meals may cost more than going to McDonald's, but the value is in the health of this meal, right? And probably other things. So the main thing you have to figure out how to do is educate people about how valuable that is, right? And for you, Jeff, maybe the value is, hey, we're going to give you time back in your life. You don't have to worry about landscaping anymore. We'll take on that for you, right? It's going to be seamless. It's going to get done. It's going to look pretty. Your neighbors are going to love it. Everything's going to be good. Those are the value propositions you advance to somebody. And they're like, yeah, shoot, I'll pay $40 a day for that, or whatever it is. I don't know. But it's making sure, because cutting the grass, that is not value, right? I could pay my son to do it. I mean, it's going to be a garbage job. I know, because he's 10, but he'll do it, like, but that's not the value, and you can see this illustrated very elegantly with luxury car marketing. They're probably some of the best at it, right? They sell great cars, sure, but those cars are more expensive to maintain, to own and operate. They're a money pit, but they're great at giving you that idea of success, or that aspirational quality, like, oh, I'm a Lexus owner now, or I'm a BMW owner. And that's really all about feelings over here, right? So how does it make you feel? Does it make you feel good that you're driving this car? Does it make you feel good that your lawn looks good? Or does it make you feel good that you're eating healthy? And the more nuanced you can get with those concepts, the more, I don't want to say the more you can charge, but the more likely you are to get a fair price for what you're doing, because you're focusing on how that person feels and what really matters to them, and not just the idea of the executing of what you're doing, right? Okay. Like, here's an example in my own life. We have a walkway up to our house, right? And the bricks of the walkway started like this, and this column started leaning and leaning and leaning and leaning. And every day my wife would walk up and just think, I have a house that is falling apart and I hate it. And so we had to, and it just it started to cause her physical and emotional pain, right? Mm-hmm. So we had to go to the marketplace and find a contractor who could fix it. And in the end, the value to Tammy wasn't anything other than, now I don't have a house that's falling apart anymore, right? Like, it could have been this incredibly ornate thing. It could have just been some bricks thrown up there. It could have been removed completely and painted up real nice. It didn't matter. Like, what somebody had to come and convince her of was, look, I'm going to make your house look good again, right? And that's what, I'm going to do it on time. I'm going to get there when I say I get there, and it's going to be done. You're going to love it. And anyway, so it's the idea of getting through just the idea of you're not selling pens. You're selling some writer's tool to write the next great American novel, okay? There's a story like that in each of your businesses. I guarantee it. Even selling antiques and things, right? It's there. And so the sooner you can get it and articulate it, the sooner you can revisit pricing and get a fair price. And people will resonate, like, they'll want to be part of something that means more than just a job that gets done or a product that gets bought, right? That makes sense? Okay. So that's one thing you can do. Pricing, very important. And at a minimum, you got to keep pace with inflation. So, and to that end, to the extent, again, that all of you can do it, build up a cash reserve. Okay. identified seasonality already in almost everybody's business here. So building up a cash reserve is critical to getting through those tough times, right? I know it's not easy, but you've got to find a way to dedicate some of your resources to operating money, right? You can't expect to get through a downturn, by completely cutting prices and doing all those things, because there won't be any money there. So you have to, in some fashion, do your best to have a pool of money that you can draw on. And sometimes that's a line of credit. Sometimes that's cash reserves. Whatever that looks like for your business, super important. And that needs to be in a business plan. And if you don't have it now, you need to sit with your partners and people and figure out how to get it. Because if you can't operate, if your cash flow stops, your business will not make it. I mean, that is the brutal, honest truth. So I think some of you guys probably know it and have experienced what it's like to have no cash flow. So, find ways to solve that problem. SBDC's got thoughts on it. There's 1,000 ways to do it, but I think, if you try to do it with credit card debt and things like that, it's only going to cause more problems down the road. So off my soapbox there, very important. In the same way, like for a family, you need to have emergency cash in a savings account to be able to, pay for if you lose a job or there's a medical emergency or your car breaks down, you need that for your business. Principles are the same. And if you're in the fortunate position to have a cash reserve right now, you need to use it effectively, which, because of the rising interest rates we have now, that cash should be working for you because it's not going to keep pace with inflation. So if it's just sitting in a bank account, you're losing 6% of its purchasing power every month. So you need to find a thing like a money market fund or a high yield account or a CD or something to put that cash that you have set aside for an emergency to work for you, because otherwise the macro economy is going to eat it away like a rabid dog. So those are some directly impactful things to do today. Questions on that? Okay. If anybody's heard any of my other lectures or attended my other webinars, I'm a big fan of proactive communication, right? So all of you have a customer base, or about to have a customer base, and some of you have suppliers that you're dependent upon. And it's vital, I feel personally, to be communicating with them what's happening in your business and sharing as much information as is feasible so that they understand where you are, right? So if you have loyal customers who might get upset at your new prices, well, you have to proactively communicate why that is, right? Like we talked about at the beginning of this course, like, hey, we're raising prices this year just to keep pace with inflation. We're trying to keep it, we're not trying to gouge anybody, but like we need to raise prices in order to be profitable, right? Or we need to do these things because we're all doing our jobs, maybe because we love them and they're fun, but also because we want to make money. And so customers understand that. They just need to be educated as to why, right? So don't ever be, we used to say in the Navy, don't ever be the most senior man with a secret, okay? So if you have a secret, tell the people that are important. Tell your suppliers, hey, I'm crunched. I'm struggling a little bit this month. Can I get net 45 terms or net 60 terms just to keep me going? Talk to people, ask them for help, involve them. Not necessarily in the decision-making process, but communicate, right? Tell people what's happening, because you'll be amazed at how humankind, despite what you read on the news or whatever, like people want other good businesses to succeed, right? And the consequence, if you go out of business, people can't get that service anymore, or you've left a void in people's lives that maybe you didn't have to. So anyway, proactively communicate, right? Talk to people and ask for help, whatever it is, but you'll be amazed at what will come your way if you just ask and tell people stuff. Lastly, I think we all should have a down market strategy built into our business, right? So down market strategy is what I talk about a lot with my clients, where we know just like the economy is going to go up and down, the stock market is going to go up and down. It's going to happen. It happened last year. It's going to happen again before you retire, guaranteed. So rather than reacting to that in a negative fashion, we identify that as an opportunity and we say to ourselves, okay, if there is a down market, we're going to have cash on hand and we're going to use that as an opportunity to invest, because the market is low. That means things are on sale in a manner of speaking. So we're going to use this as an opportunity to capture more good stuff at a lower price. That's our down market strategy, right? That's a simple way of doing it. So each of your businesses can have something like that, because guarantee you're going to have good years and bad years. And so you need to have a bad year strategy or a recession strategy. And that's going to look different for each one of your businesses. But I think you need to have one. And if you can have it and articulate it, instead of the bad economy kicking you in the butt, you're going to be ready for it. And you're going to be in a position of strength to react to it. So I can't, come up with that for each of you on this call right now, but I can definitely put that idea in your heads and say, hey, think about what do I do? So that month where your business is doing the very best, that's the month to talk about what you're going to do when it's doing the very worst. Okay,
Great.
I'm done.
Thank you so much, Adrian. This has been so helpful and encouraging, and a lot of really tangible action items we can all take away. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. We actually have another webinar we're starting right now. So if anyone wants more, you can hop on that other one. But I will follow up with this recording and some really helpful information, links where you can find out more information, and you can always schedule a one-on-one with any of our consultants to go through questions that maybe this session did raise for you. So we do want to say a big thank you to Westminster Economic Development and to you, Adrian. It's always so great to hear what's going on in the market and your great insights. And thank you all for joining us.
You're welcome. Happy to be here. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.